The gunshot that shattered the morning silence sent Catherine Owens diving beneath her wagon, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst through her ribs. It was September 1876, and she had been traveling alone through Idaho Territory for 3 days now, trying to reach her aunt's homestead near Wallace. But every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed to hide danger, and now someone was actually shooting. "Easy there, miss," a deep voice called out. "Just taking down a rattler that was getting too close to your camp. Did not mean to startle you." Catherine peered out from under the wagon, her whole body shaking. A man sat astride a large chestnut horse about 30 yards away, a rifle resting across his saddle. He was tall even sitting down, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that touched his collar beneath a well-worn hat. His face was weathered but kind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He looked concerned. "Are you hurt?" he asked, dismounting slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "No," Catherine managed, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. She was still trembling, pressed against the rough wood of the wagon bed. I thought that someone was shooting at you," he finished, understanding in his tone. He stayed where he was, not moving closer. "I apologize for frightening you. I should have called out first, but the snake was coiled and ready to strike. You were gathering wood on the other side of your wagon and walking right toward it." Catherine forced herself to crawl out from her hiding spot, though her legs felt like water. She was 22 years old and had been afraid for as long as she could remember. Afraid of storms, afraid of strangers, afraid of being alone, afraid of crowds, afraid of horses, afraid of the dark. The list went on until sometimes she felt like fear was all she was made of. Coming west had been her desperate attempt to escape her controlling father back in Ohio, but she had quickly discovered that the frontier held even more things to be terrified of. "I am sorry," she said, brushing dirt from her dark blue traveling dress with shaking hands. "I am not usually so." "Cautious," he supplied gently. "That is not a bad thing out here, miss. Mind if I make sure that snake is truly dead? Then I will be on my way and leave you to your mourning." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He walked past her wagon with easy confidence, and she heard him moving around. When he returned, he was carrying the snake's body, holding it well away from himself. "Big one," he said. 6 rattles. You were right to be careful." He studied her for a moment, taking in her pale face and the way she kept her arms wrapped around herself. "Forgive me for being forward, miss, but are you traveling alone?" "Yes," Catherine admitted, then immediately regretted it. What if he was dangerous? What if he meant her harm? Her father had warned her about men in the West, though her father had warnings about everything. "How far are you headed?" "Wallace. My aunt has a homestead there. She is a widow and needs help with her property." The man's expression shifted to something between surprise and concern. "Wallace is still a good 40 miles north of here, through some rough country." "You are aware that there have been road agents working this area?" Catherine felt her chest tighten. "Road agents, bandits," he clarified. "They have been targeting lone travelers and small wagon trains. 3 robberies in the past 2 weeks. The world seemed to tilt." Catherine reached out to steady herself against the wagon, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. This was too much. It was all too much. She should never have left Ohio. She should have stayed and married the banker her father had chosen, should have accepted the safe, suffocating life that had been planned for her. At least there she would not be shot or robbed or bitten by rattlesnakes. "Hey now," the man said, alarm in his voice. He moved closer but still kept a respectful distance. "Breathe, miss, nice and slow. You are safe right now." "I cannot do this," Catherine gasped out. "I have so many fears, too many. I thought I could be brave, could make this journey, but I cannot. I am not strong enough." "You have made it this far," he pointed out. "That took courage." "It took desperation," she corrected, tears now streaming down her face. She was mortified to be falling apart in front of this stranger, but she could not seem to stop. "I am afraid of everything. Storms, darkness, horses, snakes, strangers, being alone, being with people. I wake up afraid and go to sleep afraid and spend every moment in between terrified of something." The cowboy was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My name is Cole Harrison. I have a ranch about 5 miles from here, and I was headed up to Wallace myself to pick up supplies. If you would like, you could follow me. Safety in numbers, and I know the best routes." Catherine wiped at her face with her sleeve. "Why would you help me?" "Because you need help," Cole said simply. "And because I know what it is like to be afraid." She looked at him skeptically through her tears. He seemed like the opposite of afraid, sitting there so calm and confident. He seemed to read her thoughts. "After the war, I could not sleep without a weapon next to my bed, could not stand loud noises, could not trust people at my back. Took me years to feel right again, and I still have moments." He met her eyes directly. "Fear is not weakness, Miss Owens, Catherine Owens. Fear is not weakness, Miss Owens. It is just a feeling like any other. The question is whether you let it make your decisions for you." Catherine considered his words. She had let fear make her decisions for so long that she barely knew who she was underneath it. But coming west, leaving her father's house in the middle of the night with just what she could carry in her wagon, that had been her decision, her choice, maybe the first real one she had ever made. "I would appreciate the company," she said quietly. "If you are certain I would not be an inconvenience." "No inconvenience at all," Cole assured her. "How about I help you break camp and we can get started before the day gets too hot?" Over the next hour, Catherine watched as Cole efficiently handled tasks that had taken her twice as long the previous evening. He hitched her horse, a gentle mare named Daisy who nonetheless terrified Catherine with her size and unpredictable movements. He checked her wagon wheels and tightened a loose board. He even rebuilt her fire and made coffee that actually tasted good instead of the bitter brew she had been choking down. "You are traveling pretty light," he observed as he worked. "Is your aunt expecting you?" "I sent a letter, but I do not know if she received it," Catherine admitted. "We have not seen each other since I was a child. After my mother died, my father kept me very close to home. Aunt Margaret is my mother's sister, and they never got along, so there was no contact." "What made you decide to come now?" Catherine hesitated. The full truth was complicated and painful. "My father arranged a marriage for me, to a man I had met once, a man who looked at me like I was property he was acquiring. When I expressed concerns, my father locked me in my room and said I would stay there until I came to my senses." She swallowed hard at the memory. "I climbed out the window that night, took my mother's jewelry to sell, bought the wagon and horse and left." Cole's jaw tightened. "He had no right to treat you that way. He said it was his duty to protect me and guide my choices. He said I was too weak and fearful to make good decisions on my own." "And yet here you are," Cole said, "making your own way in the world. That does not sound weak to me." They set out as the sun climbed higher, Catherine's wagon following behind Cole's horse. He kept to an easy pace, frequently looking back to check on her. True to his word, he seemed to know every turn and shortcut, guiding them along paths that avoided the worst ruts and steepest hills. Around midday, they stopped to rest the animals near a stream. Catherine was exhausted, her arms aching from handling the reins, her whole body tense with anxiety. Cole helped her down from the wagon seat, and she was too tired to be frightened by his proximity. "You did well this morning," he said as he led the horses to water. "Kept good pace, handled the wagon nicely." "I am terrified every moment," Catherine confessed. "My heart has not stopped racing." "But you are doing it anyway," Cole pointed out. "That is what courage is, Miss Owens. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it." They ate a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried apples. Catherine found herself studying Cole when she thought he was not looking. He moved with a quiet competence that she envied, each action purposeful and sure. He was probably in his late 20s, she guessed, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from years of outdoor work. There was a sadness in his eyes sometimes, a distance that suggested he carried his own burdens. "You mentioned a ranch," she said, trying to make conversation. "Do you run it alone?" "Mostly. I have a hand who comes in during busy seasons and my neighbor helps out when needed. It is not a big operation, just enough cattle and horses to make a living. I bought the land 5 years ago after I left the army." "Do you like it? Ranching, I mean." Cole considered the question. "I do. It is honest work and I like the solitude. The animals do not care about your past or judge your demons. They just need to be fed and tended. There is something healing about that kind of simplicity." "I cannot imagine liking solitude," Catherine said. "I find it terrifying, but I also find crowds terrifying, so I suppose I am difficult to please." A slight smile crossed Cole's face. "Maybe you just have not found the right amount of company yet. Not too much, not too little." They continued north through the afternoon. The landscape was beautiful in a stark way. Rolling hills covered in sage and grass, mountains rising in the distance. Catherine tried to appreciate it, but every rock could hide a bandit. Every rustle in the brush could be a predator. Her hands were cramping from gripping the reins so tightly. As evening approached, Cole led them off the main trail to a sheltered spot beside a rocky outcropping. "We will camp here tonight," he said. "Good water, defensible position, and we can have a fire without it being seen from the road." The word defensible made Catherine's anxiety spike. "Are we in danger?" "We are being smart," Cole corrected gently. "There is a difference." He helped her down from the wagon again and began unpacking his bedroll and supplies. "How about you gather some kindling while I see to the horses? Just stay within sight of camp." Catherine forced herself to walk to the edge of their sight, looking for fallen branches. Every step felt like walking through water, her body heavy with fear. What if there was another snake? What if she got lost? What if something grabbed her from the shadows? "You are doing fine," Cole called out. "I can see you from here." His voice was like a tether, keeping her grounded. She gathered an armful of small sticks and brought them back, feeling a tiny spark of pride at completing the task. Cole built the fire with swift efficiency, and soon they had a cheerful blaze going. He made supper from his supplies, frying salt pork and heating beans, cooking biscuits in a small Dutch oven. The food was simple but delicious, and Catherine realized she had barely eaten all day. "You are a good cook," she said, scraping up the last of her beans. "Had to learn," Cole said with a shrug. "Cannot live on hardtack and jerky forever." As darkness fell, Catherine's fear ramped up. The night sounds seemed impossibly loud, every crack of a branch or call of an animal making her flinch. She sat close to the fire, wrapping her shawl tight around her shoulders. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, desperate for distraction. "What is it like?" Cole settled back against his saddle, his face thoughtful in the firelight. "The house is small, just 3 rooms, but it is solid. Built it myself with timber from the mountains. There is a good barn, a corral, about 200 acres of grazing land. A creek runs through the property, so water is never a problem." His voice took on a warmer tone. "In the spring, wildflowers cover the hills. purple and yellow and red as far as you can see. And in the winter, when the snow comes, everything is so quiet and peaceful it is like the whole world is holding its breath. It sounds beautiful, Catherine said softly. It is home, Cole agreed. He glanced at her, then away. You are welcome to stay there tomorrow night instead of pushing on to Wallace. It would give you a chance to rest, and I could take you the rest of the way the day after. Catherine's instinct was to refuse, to insist she could not possibly impose. But the thought of another night alone in the wilderness, even just one, filled her with dread. Are you certain? I would not offer if I was not. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Catherine felt herself relaxing slightly, the warmth and food and Cole's steady presence easing her anxiety. Can I ask you something? Cole said eventually. Of course. What do you hope to find in Wallace? I mean, beyond your aunt. Catherine thought about the question. Safety, I suppose. A place where I can figure out who I am without my father's voice in my head telling me I am foolish and weak. A chance to be more than just afraid all the time. That is a good goal, Cole said. Hard but good. What about you? What are your goals? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, to build something that lasts. During the war I saw so much destruction, so much waste. Everything torn down and burned. I want to create instead. To raise healthy animals to make the land productive, to maybe someday have a family and pass something good on to them. That is a beautiful dream, Catherine whispered. Cole's eyes met hers across the fire. We all deserve our dreams, Miss Owens, even the scared ones. Maybe especially the scared ones. That night, Catherine lay in her bedroll under the wagon, listening to the night sounds. Her heart was still racing, her mind cataloging all the terrible things that could happen. But when the fear got too bad, she could hear Cole's steady breathing from where he had spread his bedroll on the other side of the fire, and somehow that helped. She was not alone. For the first time in 3 days, she was not alone. She woke several times in the night, startled by dreams or noises. Each time, she saw Cole sitting by the fire, keeping watch. He never complained, never acted put out. He was just there, a solid presence between her and the darkness. Morning came with a spectacular sunrise, the sky turning pink and gold. Catherine emerged from under her wagon feeling tired but less panicked than she had been. Cole already had coffee brewing and was frying bacon over the fire. Morning, he said with a slight smile. Sleep at all? A little, Catherine admitted. Did you? Enough. He handed her a tin cup of coffee. We will reach my ranch by early afternoon if we make good time. The last stretch is pretty safe, mostly my land and my neighbors. They broke camp and set out again. Catherine found the rhythm of travel slightly less terrifying today, though she was still constantly alert for danger. Cole rode beside her wagon now instead of ahead, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the area. That peak there, that is Black Mountain. Good hunting in the forests on its slopes, and see that line of cottonwoods. That marks Bear Creek, which feeds into the creek that runs through my property. How long have you lived in Idaho? Catherine asked. 5 years, like I said, came here right after my discharge. I grew up in Missouri, but there was nothing left for me there after the war. Too many memories, too much pain. I wanted a fresh start somewhere nobody knew me or my history. Did it work, the fresh start? Cole considered. Mostly. You cannot outrun your past entirely, but you can build a new future. That helps more than you might think. They rode in silence for a while, the landscape gradually becoming more settled. They passed a few homesteads, saw cattle grazing in the distance. The mountains seemed closer now, their peaks still white with snow despite the late summer warmth. Tell me about your fears, Cole said suddenly. You mentioned having many. When did that start? Catherine tensed. I do not know if I want to talk about that. Fair enough. But I have found that sometimes naming the fears makes them smaller. You do not have to if you are not comfortable. She chewed her lip, debating. Then, slowly, she said, My mother died when I was 8. Cholera. It was sudden and awful, and I did not understand what was happening. One day she was fine, the next she was feverish, and then she was just gone. The old pain tightened her throat. After that, I was afraid of everything. Afraid I would die, afraid my father would die, afraid of being sick, afraid of the world. And my father, instead of helping me face those fears, he encouraged them, kept me home from school, did not let me go out with friends. He said the world was dangerous and he was protecting me. But really, I think he was trying to keep me from leaving him like my mother did. That must have been very lonely, Cole said gently. It was. By the time I was grown, the whole world felt like a threat. I had no idea how to be a person in it. But I also started to realize that I would rather be afraid and free than afraid and trapped. That took tremendous courage. It does not feel like courage, Catherine said. It feels like terror every moment of every day. Courage and terror can exist at the same time, Cole told her. In fact, they usually do. Around midday, they crested a hill and Cole pointed ahead. There, that is my place. Catherine saw a small but sturdy-looking house nestled in a valley, with a barn and several outbuildings nearby. Fences marked off pastures where cattle grazed, and she could see the glint of water from the creek he had mentioned. It looked peaceful and well-tended, a little oasis of order in the wild landscape. As they drew closer, Catherine felt her anxiety rising again. New place, unfamiliar territory, too many unknowns. But Cole seemed to sense her tension. You are safe here, he said firmly. This is my land, and I give you my word that no harm will come to you under my roof. They pulled up in front of the house, and Cole dismounted to help Catherine down from her wagon. His hands were warm and steady on her waist, and for just a moment, she felt completely secure. Then her feet hit the ground and the feeling faded, replaced by her usual flutter of nerves. Let me show you around, Cole said, leading her toward the house. It is not fancy, but it is comfortable. The inside of the house was neat and simple. The main room served as kitchen and living space, with a stone fireplace on one wall and a sturdy table with chairs in the center. A door led to what Cole explained was his bedroom, and a ladder went up to a loft space above. You can take the loft, Cole said. It is private and comfortable. I will stay down here. I cannot take your space, Catherine protested. You are not taking it, I am offering it. The loft has a good bed and it will be quieter for you up there. Over the next few hours, Cole helped Catherine bring her things inside and get settled. He showed her where everything was, how to work the pump at the sink, where the privy was located. His calm, practical manner made everything feel manageable. I need to check on the cattle and do a few chores, he said once she was settled. Will you be all right here for a couple of hours? Catherine felt panic flutter in her chest. I suppose so. The door has a good lock if that makes you feel safer, and I will be within shouting distance the whole time. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole gave her an understanding look and headed outside. As soon as he was gone, the house felt too big and too small at the same time. Catherine locked the door and then felt foolish for doing so. She made herself busy, unpacking her things and trying not to jump at every sound. By the time Cole returned, she had worked herself into a state of high anxiety. He found her sitting at the table, gripping a cup of tea with shaking hands. Hey, he said softly, pulling out a chair to sit across from her. What happened? Nothing. Everything. I do not know. Catherine felt tears building. I am sorry. I know I am being ridiculous. You are not being ridiculous. You are being afraid, which is different. Cole reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "May I?" she nodded, and he gently placed his hand over hers. The contact was warm and grounding. "Catherine, I want you to listen to me. You are safe here. Nothing is going to hurt you, not while I am here, and I am not going anywhere." "You cannot promise that," she whispered. "You are right, I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. But I can promise that I will do everything in my power to keep you safe, and I can promise that you are stronger than you think you are." They sat like that for a long moment, his hand covering hers, his eyes steady and calm. Catherine felt her breathing slow, her heart rate settle. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "Make me feel less afraid." Cole smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Maybe you make yourself less afraid. Maybe I just remind you that you can." That evening, Cole cooked a proper dinner, steak and potatoes and greens from his garden. They ate at the table as the light faded outside, talking about small things. Catherine found herself relaxing in increments, her shoulders dropping, her hands unclenching. There was something about Cole's presence that felt like shelter. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they cleaned up after dinner. "Sure." "Earlier you said you knew what it was like to be afraid. What did you mean?" Cole was quiet for a moment, drying the plate in his hands with slow, methodical movements. "I was at Shiloh," he said finally. "Second day of fighting. I was 20 years old and had never seen real combat before. The noise, the smoke, the screaming. Men I had eaten breakfast with were dead by noon. Boys, really, most of us were just boys." Catherine waited, sensing he needed to tell this at his own pace. "I did my duty," Cole continued. "Followed orders, fought when told to fight, retreated when told to retreat. But inside, I was terrified every moment. And afterward, when the battle was over, I could not make the fear stop. Loud noises would send me diving for cover. I could not sleep more than an hour at a time. I was afraid in a way I had never been afraid before, like my body did not understand the danger was over. What did you do?" "Survived, kept going, finished out my service and came west where things were quieter. Slowly, over years, the fear got smaller. It never went away completely, but it got manageable. I learned that I could function even when I was afraid, and eventually I was not afraid quite so often." "Do you think that could happen for me?" Catherine asked quietly. Cole turned to look at her directly. "I think you have already started. Every choice you have made in the past weeks, every moment you have kept going despite your fear, that is you learning to function through it. That is you getting stronger." That night, Catherine climbed the ladder to the loft and found a comfortable bed with clean blankets and a small window that looked out over the valley. She could hear Cole moving around below, the familiar sounds of someone settling in for the night. And when she lay down, she was still afraid, but not quite as much. She woke once in the deepest part of the night, her heart pounding from a nightmare she could not remember. Before the fear could fully take hold, she heard Cole's voice from below. "You are all right, Catherine. Just a dream. You are safe." "How did you know I was awake?" she called down softly. "I heard you. I am a light sleeper these days. I am sorry for disturbing you. You did not disturb me. Try to sleep. I am right here." Those words, simple as they were, settled over her like a warm blanket. "I am right here." She was not alone. She closed her eyes and, remarkably, fell back asleep. Morning came bright and clear. Catherine woke feeling more rested than she had in days, perhaps weeks. She climbed down from the loft to find Cole already up, coffee made and breakfast cooking. "Morning," he said, glancing over with a smile. "Sleep better, I did actually, thank you for last night when I woke up. Anytime." He dished up eggs and bacon onto 2 plates. "I was thinking, if you are not in a terrible hurry to get to Wallace, you could stay another day or 2. Rest up, gather your strength. Your aunt does not know exactly when you are coming anyway, right?" Catherine knew she should refuse. It was improper, staying at a single man's home, even with her in the loft and him downstairs. But the thought of leaving this safe haven, of facing the unknown at her aunt's house, filled her with dread. "If you are certain I am not imposing," she said hesitantly. "Not at all. In fact, I would appreciate the company, and maybe I can help you work on some of those fears while you are here." "Work on them how?" Cole sat down across from her with his own plate. "Small steps. You said you are afraid of horses, for example. How about we spend some time with them today? Just being near them, letting you get comfortable. No pressure, just exposure." Catherine's immediate instinct was to refuse, but she made herself pause. She had come west to face her fears, to be more than a scared girl hiding in her room. "All right," she said, though her voice shook. "I will try." After breakfast, Cole led her out to the corral where several horses stood. Catherine hung back at the fence, her heart already racing. "That is Rusty," Cole said, pointing to his chestnut mount. "He is 9 years old, calm as they come, and that is Belle, my best mare. The bay is Thunder and the gray is Smoke." "They are very large," Catherine said faintly. "They are," Cole agreed, "but they are also gentle and well-trained. Here, watch." He climbed over the fence and walked up to Rusty, stroking the horse's neck. The animal lowered its head, clearly comfortable with Cole's presence. "See, he is just a big, gentle creature. He has very large teeth." Cole laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "He does, but he only uses them for eating grass and oats. Come on, come into the corral. You do not have to touch him, just stand near him." Every instinct screamed at Catherine to refuse, but she made herself climb over the fence, her hands shaking. Cole moved to stand beside her, his presence steadying. "Good," he said quietly. "Now just breathe. Watch how Rusty breathes too. See how relaxed he is." Catherine focused on the horse, watching the rise and fall of its sides, the way its ears swiveled lazily. It did seem calm. "Horses are prey animals," Cole explained. "That means they are naturally nervous and watchful, but when they feel safe, they relax, just like people. Rusty feels safe here, so he is relaxed." They stood there for several minutes, just being present with the horses. Catherine's heart rate gradually slowed. The horses did not seem interested in her at all, which was somehow reassuring. "Want to try touching him?" Cole asked. "I do not think so." "That is fine. We will just stand here then." They spent the morning doing small exercises like this. Cole would introduce a mildly frightening thing, let Catherine approach it at her own pace, and then back off when she needed to. They worked with the horses, walked to the edge of his property where the land was more wild, practiced being in the barn where it was dark and enclosed. Each time, Catherine felt the fear rise up, and each time, Cole was there with his steady presence and calm voice, reminding her that she was safe, that she could do this. "You are doing so well," he told her as they walked back to the house for lunch. "I know it does not feel like it, but you are making real progress." "It still feels terrifying," Catherine admitted. "That is because you are being brave. Brave is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it." Over lunch, Cole told her more about his life on the ranch, the rhythms of the seasons, the challenges and rewards. Catherine found herself fascinated, not just by the stories, but by the man telling them. There was a quiet strength to Cole, a steadiness that she found deeply attractive. And he was attractive, she was realizing. Not in a flashy way, but in the way of a person who was completely himself, comfortable in his own skin. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, catching her staring. Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Just that you seem very content here." "It is nice to see someone at peace with their life." "It took work to get here," Cole said. "And I am not always at peace. But yes, I have built something I am proud of, something that matters to me, that counts for a lot." That afternoon, a neighbor stopped by. an older man named Frank who owned the adjacent property. Catherine tensed at the new person, but Frank was friendly and respectful, tipping his hat to her and making easy conversation with Cole about cattle and weather and fence repairs. "You did not tell me you were courting someone, Cole," Frank said with a twinkle in his eye before he left. "Catherine is a friend passing through," Cole said firmly, though Catherine noticed a slight color in his cheeks. "She is on her way to Wallace." After Frank left, there was a moment of awkwardness between them. Friend seemed like too small a word for what was developing, but Catherine was not sure what the right word was. All she knew was that she felt safer with Cole than she had ever felt with anyone, and that when he smiled at her, she felt something warm bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. That evening they sat on the porch as the sun set, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to deep purple. The night sounds that had terrified Catherine just days ago now felt almost peaceful, just the ordinary noise of the world settling in for sleep. "I leave for Wallace tomorrow," she said quietly. "I should anyway. I have imposed on your hospitality enough." "You have not imposed at all," Cole said. "But I understand if you need to go. Your aunt is probably worried. Will you take me there? You mentioned you needed supplies in town anyway. Of course. We will leave first thing in the morning." They sat in silence for a while, neither seeming to want to break the peaceful moment. Then Catherine said, "Cole, I want to thank you, not just for helping me travel safely, but for everything. For being patient with my fears, for helping me see that I am stronger than I thought. You have given me more in a few days than anyone has given me in years." Cole turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "Catherine, you did that yourself. I just walked alongside you while you did it. That is not a small thing," she said softly. "Walking alongside someone. Being their safe haven when everything feels dangerous. That is everything." Something shifted in the air between them. Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses but warm and gentle. "You are a remarkable woman," he said. "Braver than you know, stronger than you believe. Any man would be lucky to have you in his life." Catherine's heart was pounding, but not from fear. "Cole, You do not have to say anything," he said. "I know you are just passing through, that you have a life to build with your aunt. I just wanted you to know that these few days have meant something to me. You have meant something to me." "You have meant something to me too," Catherine whispered. "More than I think I can put into words." They sat there holding hands as full darkness fell, neither wanting to move, neither willing to break the connection. Catherine felt tears prickling her eyes, but they were not tears of fear for once. They were tears of something else, something that felt like grief for what might have been if circumstances were different. Eventually, Cole walked her inside. At the base of the ladder to the loft, he paused. "Sleep well, Catherine." "You too," she said. Then, gathering her courage, she rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Thank you for everything." She climbed the ladder quickly before she could lose her nerve, her face burning. In the loft, she touched her lips, feeling the ghost of his stubble against her skin. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Somewhere between his calm presence and gentle encouragement, between his steady hands and understanding eyes, she had fallen completely and utterly in love with Cole Harrison. The realization was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Below, she heard Cole moving around, settling in for the night. She wondered if he could possibly feel the same way, or if she was just a passing charity case to him, someone to help and then forget. Sleep was long in coming that night, but when it finally arrived, she dreamed of horses running across flowering hills, and she was not afraid. Morning came too soon. Catherine packed her belongings slowly, trying to delay the inevitable. Cole made breakfast, and they ate in near silence. the easy conversation of previous days replaced by something heavier. As they prepared to leave, Catherine found herself memorizing details. The way Cole's hands moved as he hitched up her wagon, the angle of his hat, the line of his shoulders. She wanted to remember everything about this place and this man who had given her back pieces of herself she had thought lost. The journey to Wallace took most of the day. They traveled in silence for long stretches, but it was a comfortable silence, weighted with unspoken words. Cole pointed out landmarks as they went, telling her stories about the area, and Catherine tried to focus on his words rather than the growing ache in her chest. As they crested a final hill, Cole pointed ahead. "There, that is Wallace." Catherine saw a small but bustling town spread out in a valley, with a main street lined with businesses and houses spreading out beyond. It looked busy and prosperous, very different from the isolated beauty of Cole's ranch. "You know where your aunt's homestead is?" Cole asked. She said it was on the eastern edge of town, near a grove of aspens. They made their way through Wallace's streets, drawing a few curious glances from townspeople. Cole asked directions from a man outside the general store, and soon they were heading toward the edge of town. The homestead, when they found it, was smaller than Catherine had expected. The house was weathered but solid, with a small barn and a vegetable garden. As they pulled up, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. "Catherine," she called, "is that you?" "Aunt Margaret." Catherine climbed down from the wagon, and her aunt hurried over to embrace her. Margaret Owens was in her 50s, tall and thin with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had the same features as Catherine's mother, and seeing her brought a lump to Catherine's throat. "Child, I have been so worried," Margaret said, pulling back to look at her. "Your letter arrived just a week ago. I was not sure when to expect you." Her eyes shifted to Cole. "And who is this?" "This is Cole Harrison," Catherine said. "He helped me travel safely from his ranch." "Cole, this is my aunt, Margaret Owens." "Pleased to meet you, madam," Cole said, tipping his hat. "Thank you for looking after my niece," Margaret said warmly. "Will you stay for supper? It is the least I can offer after you have brought Catherine safely to me." Cole glanced at Catherine, and she found herself nodding eagerly. She was not ready to say goodbye yet. "That would be nice, thank you," Cole said. They spent the next hour unloading Catherine's wagon and moving her belongings into the small room that would be hers. Margaret fluttered around, talking rapidly about the house and the town and all the plans she had for getting Catherine settled. Over supper, Margaret asked about Catherine's journey, and Catherine found herself telling an edited version that left out most of her fears and focused on Cole's helpful presence. Margaret was clearly curious about Cole, asking about his ranch and how he had come to meet Catherine. "Your niece is a brave woman," Cole said at one point. "She has traveled a long way to start a new life." "Her father certainly did not make it easy," Margaret said with a sniff. "My brother-in-law is a controlling man who cannot see past his own needs." I am glad Catherine found the courage to leave. After supper, Cole prepared to leave. Catherine walked him out to where his horse was tied, her heart heavy. "So this is goodbye," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I suppose it is," Cole said, but he did not move to mount his horse. "Catherine, I want you to know that if you ever need anything at all, my ranch is just a day's ride from here. Please do not hesitate to come to me." "I will remember that," Catherine said. "And Cole, I want you to know that you changed my life. In just a few days, you showed me that I could be braver than I thought, stronger than I believed. I will never forget that." Cole reached out and took both of her hands in his. "You did that yourself. I just reminded you what was already there." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. Then he said, "Catherine, I know we have only known each other a short time, but I need to tell you that these past days have meant more to me than I can say. You have awakened something in me that I thought was long dead." "Cole," Catherine breathed. "I am not asking you for anything," he continued quickly. "I know you need time to settle in here to figure out your new life. I just needed you to know that if you should ever want, well, my door is always open to you, not just as a friend, but as something more." Catherine felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I care for you too," she said, "so much, but I am still so afraid of everything. I would not be a good partner for anyone right now." "Then get less afraid," Cole said gently. "Work on it like we did with the horses. Take small steps. And when you feel ready, if you feel ready, come find me. I will wait. I cannot ask you to wait for me. You are not asking. I am offering." He released one of her hands to cup her cheek, wiping away tears with his thumb. "You are worth waiting for, Catherine Owens." Then he leaned down and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Catherine melted into it, her free hand coming up to grip his shirt, holding him close. The kiss tasted like goodbye and hope at the same time. When they parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers for a moment. "Be well," he whispered. "Be brave, and remember you are not alone." Then he mounted his horse and rode away. Catherine stood watching until he disappeared around a bend in the road, her fingers pressed to her lips, her heart aching. The next weeks passed in a blur. Catherine threw herself into helping her aunt, learning the rhythms of the homestead. Margaret had 20 acres, too much for one woman to manage alone, and she was grateful for Catherine's help. They tended the garden, cared for the chickens and the milk cow, did the endless rounds of cooking and cleaning and mending. Margaret was kind but practical, and she did not coddle Catherine's fears. When Catherine was afraid to go into the barn alone, Margaret simply said, "Then take a lantern and go anyway. The cow needs milking regardless of your nerves." It was hard but helpful. Slowly, Catherine found herself doing things that would have paralyzed her with fear back in Ohio. She walked into town alone. She climbed the ladder to the hayloft. She killed a spider instead of running away from it, but at night she lay in her small bed and thought about Cole. She remembered his steady presence, his patient voice, the way his hands had felt holding hers. She touched her lips and remembered that kiss, so gentle and full of possibility. "You are pining," Margaret said one evening as they shelled peas on the porch. Catherine startled. "What? For that cowboy who brought you here, Cole, you are pining for him." "I barely know him," Catherine protested. "Sometimes knowing does not take long," Margaret said. "I knew I loved my William within a week of meeting him, married him a month later, and had 30 good years before the fever took him. But I am not ready for love," Catherine said. "I am still too afraid, too broken." "Who told you that you were broken?" "My father, and he was right. I am a mess of fears and anxieties." Margaret set down her bowl of peas and turned to look at Catherine directly. "Listen to me, child. Fear does not make you broken, it makes you human. We are all afraid of something. The question is whether you let that fear stop you from living your life." Cole said something similar. "Then he is a wise man. Catherine, you have traveled halfway across the country alone, left everything familiar, started a new life in a wild place. Those are not the actions of a broken person. Those are the actions of someone incredibly brave. I do not feel brave. Bravery never does. Now, are you going to sit here feeling sorry for yourself, or are you going to go after what you want?" Catherine stared at her aunt. "What if he has changed his mind? It has been weeks. Only one way to find out." That night, Catherine barely slept. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. What if Cole had just been being kind? What if he did not really want her? What if she rode all the way to his ranch and he turned her away? But underneath the fear was something else. Hope and longing. and the memory of his words, "You are worth waiting for." In the morning, she told Margaret her decision. "I am going to Cole's ranch. I do not know what will happen, but I need to try." Margaret smiled. "Good girl. Take the wagon and the mare, and Catherine, do not let fear make your decisions for you. Let love have a turn." The journey back south felt both longer and shorter than it had with Cole. Catherine was alone again, but she was not as frightened this time. She still jumped at sounds, still felt her heart race at unfamiliar things, but she kept going. She thought about Cole and his steady presence, and it gave her courage. She camped one night on the trail, building her own fire and keeping watch. She did not sleep much, but she survived, and when morning came, she felt a small spark of pride. She was doing this. She was facing her fears and doing it anyway. It was late afternoon when she finally saw Cole's ranch in the valley below. Her heart began to pound, but not entirely from fear. She was nervous about what she would say, about how he would react. As she drew closer, she saw Cole emerge from the barn. He shaded his eyes, watching her approach. She could not read his expression from this distance. Catherine pulled the wagon up in front of the house and climbed down on shaking legs. Cole walked toward her slowly, his face still unreadable. "Catherine," he said, "is everything all right? Is there trouble?" "No," she said quickly. "No trouble, I needed to see you." Something shifted in Cole's expression, a careful hope appearing in his eyes. "You rode all this way alone." "I did. I was terrified the whole way, but I did it anyway." She took a step closer to him. "You told me to work on my fears, to take small steps." "So I have been. I am still afraid of most things, Cole. I probably always will be, but I realized something these past weeks." "What is that?" "I am more afraid of living without you than I am of anything else in this world." The words came out in a rush, her voice shaking. "You asked me to come to you when I was ready, and I know it has not been that long, but I am as ready as I am going to be. I am still scared and anxious and probably impossible to live with, but I love you, Cole. I love you, and I am choosing to be brave enough to tell you that." For a moment, Cole just stared at her. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming him. "You love me?" "Yes," Catherine whispered. "Is that all right?" Instead of answering, Cole closed the distance between them and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. Catherine laughed, clutching his shoulders, her fear momentarily forgotten in the joy of his embrace. When he set her down, he cupped her face in both hands. "Catherine Owens, I have loved you since you dove under that wagon because of a gunshot. I loved your honesty about your fears, your determination to face them, your courage in the face of a world that terrifies you. And I will spend the rest of my life being your safe haven if you will let me." "Yes," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, please." Cole kissed her then, deep and sweet and full of promise. Catherine kissed him back, pouring all her love and hope and remaining fear into it. His arms around her felt like home, like safety, like everything she had been searching for. When they finally broke apart, Cole kept his arms around her. "Will you stay?" he asked. "Not just for tonight, but always. Will you marry me, Catherine? Build a life with me here?" "Yes," Catherine said without hesitation. 1,000 times yes. They stood there holding each other as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Catherine was still afraid. She was afraid of 100 things, 1,000 things. But with Cole's arms around her and his heart beating steady against her own, she knew she would face every one of those fears. Because love, real love, was worth being brave for. The next day, Cole rode back to Wallace with Catherine to speak to Aunt Margaret and make arrangements. Margaret cried when they told her the news, but they were happy tears. "I knew it," she said, hugging them both. "I knew the moment I saw you two together. You belong to each other." They were married 3 weeks later in Wallace's small church. It was a simple ceremony with Margaret and a few of Cole's neighbors in attendance. Catherine wore a dress that had been her mother's, altered to fit her by Margaret's skilled hands. Cole wore his best suit, looking handsome and nervous. When the preacher asked if she would take Cole as her husband, Catherine's voice was clear and strong. "I will." And when Cole slipped a simple gold band on her finger, his hands were steady. "You are my heart," he whispered, "my courage and my safe haven too." The first months of marriage were an adjustment. Catherine had to learn to run a household, to manage a ranch, to be a partner instead of a dependent. There were hard days when her fears got the better of her, when she had setbacks and needed to hide away. But Cole was always patient, always steady. He gave her space when she needed it and support when she asked for it. And slowly, gradually, Catherine found herself changing. The fears did not disappear, but they became smaller, more manageable. She learned to ride horses, even to enjoy it on good days. She learned to shoot a rifle, handle cattle, fix fences. She learned to trust herself and her capabilities. But more than that, she learned what it meant to be loved unconditionally. Cole never made her feel weak for her anxieties. He simply helped her work through them, one small step at a time. In the spring, Catherine discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a fresh wave of fears about childbirth and motherhood and all the things that could go wrong. But it also brought joy, the thought of creating a life with the man she loved. "What if I am not a good mother?" She confessed to Cole one evening as they sat on the porch. "What if I pass all my fears on to our child? Then we will teach them together how to be brave despite their fears," Cole said, his hand resting on the small swell of her belly. "Just like you have been learning. Just like I learned after the war. Fear is not the enemy, Catherine. Giving up is." Their son was born in December as snow fell softly outside. The birth was hard, and there were moments when Catherine's fears nearly overwhelmed her. But Cole was there, holding her hand, his steady presence anchoring her through the pain and terror. When the midwife placed their son in her arms, Catherine looked down at the tiny, perfect face and felt love so fierce it took her breath away. They named him William, after Margaret's late husband, with the middle name Harrison. "He is beautiful," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did so well, Catherine. You were so brave." "I had you," Catherine said simply. "You gave me courage." Watching Cole with their son over the following weeks and months, Catherine fell in love with him all over again. He was a patient, attentive father, getting up for nighttime feedings, walking the floor with William when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint. "You are a natural," Catherine told him one evening as she watched him cradle their sleeping son. "I just love him," Cole said. "Same as I love you, it makes it easy." The years passed in a blur of seasons and growth. William grew into a curious, energetic toddler, then a bright young boy. Catherine and Cole expanded the ranch, adding more cattle and horses. Catherine discovered she had a gift for training horses, her patience and understanding of fear making her excellent at working with nervous animals. 3 years after William, they had a daughter they named Emily. She had Catherine's dark hair and Cole's calm temperament. 2 years after that came another son, Daniel, who was fearless and wild and kept them all on their toes. The ranch prospered. Cole and Catherine worked side by side, building something lasting and good. They had hard times, certainly. There were seasons of drought, a year when disease took half their cattle, moments when money was tight and the future uncertain, but they faced it all together. Catherine still had fears. There were still days when anxiety made it hard to breathe, when she had to talk herself through simple tasks. But those days became fewer and further between. And even on the worst days, she had Cole, her safe haven, her courage when her own faltered. On their 10th anniversary, they sat on the porch as the sun set, watching their children play in the yard. William was 12 now, tall and serious like his father. Emily was 7, creative and kind. Daniel was 5, a whirlwind of energy and mischief. "You ever regret it?" Catherine asked Cole. "Marrying someone with so many fears?" Cole turned to look at her, his eyes full of love. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything I ever wanted, Catherine. A home full of love, children to raise, a partner who understands that strength is not the absence of struggle. You taught me that courage comes in many forms." "You saved me," Catherine said softly. "No," Cole corrected gently. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could." Catherine leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. She thought about the terrified young woman who had dove under a wagon at the sound of a gunshot, who could barely function from fear. She was still that woman in some ways, still prone to anxiety and worry. But she was also so much more now. She was a wife, a mother, a rancher. She was a woman who had faced her fears again and again and kept going. She was loved and loving, secure in the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. "I love you," she said to Cole. "I love you too," he replied. "Every scared, brave, beautiful part of you." The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, and from inside the house came the sound of their children laughing. Catherine thought about the future, about all the unknowns that still scared her. But she also thought about this moment, this perfect moment of peace and love and family. She was still afraid of many things, but she was no longer afraid of living. And that, she realized, made all the difference. Years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story. The children grew, and Catherine and Cole grew older, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening on their faces. The ranch remained their haven, a place of safety and hard work and deep satisfaction. William grew into a fine young man with his father's steady nature and his mother's empathy. At 19, he began courting a neighbor's daughter, a spirited young woman who made him laugh. Catherine watched her son fall in love and remembered her own journey, the terror and the joy intertwined. Emily proved to have a gift for teaching, spending hours helping the younger children in Wallace with their lessons. She talked of becoming a school teacher, and Catherine encouraged her, proud of her daughter's passion and dedication. Daniel, true to his wild nature, talked of adventure and seeing the world beyond Idaho. He was 14 now, restless and eager, and Catherine had to remind herself to let him explore, to not let her own fears hold him back. Aunt Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep when Catherine was 35. They buried her next to her husband in the Wallace Cemetery, and Catherine mourned the woman who had given her a second chance at life. But she also celebrated the years they had shared, the wisdom Margaret had imparted. Cole's neighbor Frank also passed, and Cole bought his land, expanding their holdings. The ranch was substantial now, prosperous and well-run. They hired several hands to help with the work, and their home became a gathering place for friends and neighbors. On their 20th anniversary, Cole surprised Catherine with a trip. They left the children in William's capable care and traveled to San Francisco, spending a week in the bustling city. Catherine was nervous about the crowds and the noise, but with Cole beside her, she managed. They walked along the waterfront, ate at fine restaurants, stayed in a real hotel with indoor plumbing and electric lights. "The world is changing so fast," Catherine said as they watched ships in the harbor. "It is," Cole agreed. "But some things stay the same: love, family, commitment. Those are forever." On their last night in the city, they stood on a balcony overlooking the bay. Catherine leaned against Cole, his arms around her, and marveled at how far she had come. The frightened girl from Ohio felt like a different person, someone she barely recognized. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked. "That I am grateful," Catherine said. "For you, for our life, for every moment we have had together. You gave me courage when I had none, Cole. You taught me that love could be a safe place instead of a trap." "You taught me that broken things can heal," Cole replied. "That fear does not mean weakness. That patience and understanding matter more than anything else." They returned home to find the ranch running smoothly and their children eager for stories of the city. Life settled back into its familiar rhythms, and Catherine found deep contentment in the ordinary moments. Cole's hand in hers as they walked the property, the sound of their children's voices, the satisfaction of a day's work done well. As their children grew into adulthood and began their own journeys, Catherine and Cole found themselves with more time together. They took evening rides across the ranch, sat for hours on the porch talking, traveled to visit Emily when she secured a teaching position in boys. William married his sweetheart when he was 22, and a year later, they gave Catherine and Cole their first grandchild, a boy they named Cole. Catherine held her grandson and marveled at the continuation of life, the way love rippled forward through generations. "He looks like you," she told Cole, seeing her husband's features in the baby's tiny face. "He is perfect," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just perfect." Emily married at 24, a kind young man who adored her and supported her teaching career. They settled in boys, and Catherine missed her daughter but was proud of the life Emily was building. Daniel, true to his adventurous spirit, joined the army at 18. Catherine's old fears surged up at the news, memories of Cole's stories about the war making her terrified for her youngest son. But Cole held her as she cried and reminded her that they had raised Daniel to be strong and capable. "He needs to find his own way," Cole said gently, "just like we found ours." Daniel came home safe after his service, full of stories and plans. He used his saved pay to buy land further north and started his own ranch. Catherine saw her own journey reflected in her son's, the need to strike out and prove himself. The years turned, the seasons cycled, and Catherine and Cole grew old together. Their bodies slowed, their hands grew gnarled with arthritis, their steps became more careful. But their love remained strong, steady, a foundation that had only deepened with time. On their 40th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 7 grandchildren now, ranging from baby Rose to teenage Cole. The house rang with laughter and talk, and Catherine looked around at the faces of the family they had created and felt overwhelming gratitude. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Catherine and Cole sat on the porch one more time. The same porch where they had sat so many times before, through so many seasons of their life together. 40 years, Catherine said wonderingly. How did it pass so quickly? In the best way possible, Cole replied, filled with love and purpose in each other. I was so afraid, Catherine remembered. That day you found me by my wagon, I had so many fears I could barely function. And now look at us. A whole life built, a family raised, a legacy created. You did that, Cole said firmly. You chose courage over fear again and again. I am proud of you, Catherine, prouder than I can say. We did it together, Catherine corrected. You were my courage when I had none. My safe haven when the world felt too dangerous. You showed me what love could be. Cole took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her weathered knuckles. You showed me what healing looks like, what patience and understanding can build. You were my redemption, Catherine. My reason to build something good after seeing so much destruction. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the stars appear. Catherine thought about all the moments that had led to this one, the gunshot that had sent her diving under a wagon, Cole's calm voice assuring her she was safe, the slow building of trust and understanding, the choice to be brave despite her fears. She thought about the hard times and the joyful ones, the births and the deaths, the struggles and the triumphs. Every moment had been worth it. Every fear faced had led to growth. Every step forward had brought her closer to the life she now lived. "If you could go back," Cole asked quietly, "and tell that frightened young woman by her wagon one thing, what would it be?" Catherine considered the question. "I would tell her that she is stronger than she knows, that the fear will never fully go away, but it will get easier to carry. That love is real and safety is possible, and courage can be found in the most unexpected places." She squeezed his hand. "I would tell her that a cowboy is going to change her life, and that she should trust him, even though trust is terrifying. Because he will become her courage and her safe haven, and together they will build something beautiful. I would tell my younger self to take his time shooting that rattlesnake," Cole said with a slight smile, "so he could meet his future wife a little bit sooner." Catherine laughed, the sound soft in the night air. "We had the time we needed, not a moment more, not a moment less." As the years continued, Catherine's health began to fail. Her heart, always prone to racing with anxiety, grew weaker. The doctors in Wallace did what they could, but the limits of frontier medicine were clear. Catherine faced her decline with the same courage she had learned to apply to everything else in her life. "I am afraid," she admitted to Cole one evening as they lay in bed. She was 63 now, and every breath was becoming a struggle. "I am afraid of leaving you." "I know," Cole said, holding her close. "I am afraid of that too, but Catherine, we have had 41 years together. 41 beautiful, full, amazing years. We raised 3 wonderful children. We built a legacy. We loved each other well." "It is not enough time," Catherine whispered. "It never would be," Cole agreed. "But it is what we have, and it has been extraordinary." Their children came to say goodbye, gathering around her bed with tears and memories. Catherine held each grandchild, imparting final words of love and wisdom. She told William to always lead with kindness. She told Emily to keep teaching and inspiring. She told Daniel to stay brave but be smart about it. And to Cole, she said, "Thank you for saving me, for loving me, for giving me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You were everything I needed and more than I deserved." "You were never less than you deserved everything good," Cole said, his voice breaking. "You were my heart, Catherine, my everything." Catherine Owens Harrison passed away peacefully on a spring morning, with Cole holding her hand and their children surrounding them. She left behind a legacy of love and courage, a family who would carry forward the lessons she had taught them about facing fear with bravery. Cole mourned deeply. For weeks, he walked the ranch land they had built together, remembering. The house felt empty without her presence, without her voice and her laugh, and the way she would reach for his hand whenever she felt scared. But he also celebrated what they had shared. He told stories to his grandchildren about their grandmother, about how brave she was, how she faced her fears every day and chose love over terror. He made sure they knew that Catherine had been remarkable, that her struggles had made her strong, not weak. He lived another 5 years after Catherine's death, staying active on the ranch until the end. He watched his grandchildren grow, welcomed 2 more great-grandchildren, and found peace in knowing that the life he and Catherine had built would continue long after they were gone. When Cole Harrison died at 72, he was laid to rest beside Catherine in the Wallace Cemetery. Their children made sure the headstone reflected their story. Cole Harrison, 1847–1924. Catherine Owens Harrison, 1854–1917, Together they found courage and love and built a legacy of family and faith. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through William and his children. The house where Catherine and Cole had raised their family remained standing, a testament to what they had built together. Future generations would walk the land they had worked and hear stories about the fearful young woman and the steady cowboy who had loved her. And in those stories, in that legacy, Catherine and Cole lived on, not just in memory, but in the values they had instilled, the love they had shared, the courage they had embodied. They had faced their fears together and built something that would last long beyond their years. It was a life well lived, a love well honored, and a story worth remembering. The frightened girl who had so many fears had become a woman of courage and strength, all because a cowboy had chosen to be her safe haven. And in return, she had given him a reason to build something beautiful from the ashes of war and pain. Their story was one of transformation, of love conquering fear, of two broken people finding healing in each other. And it was a story that would echo through the generations, a reminder that courage comes in many forms, that fear is not the end, and that love, true love, can change everything. The Wild West had been tamed, but the legacy of Catherine and Cole Harrison remained, a beacon of hope and courage for all who came after.